Postal worker admits fabricating allegations of ballot tampering, officials say. And they have this really like generic photo of a fake ballot box, I guess. A Pennsylvania postal worker whose claims have been cited by top Republicans as potential evidence of widespread voting irregularities, admitted to U.S. Postal Service investigators that he fabricated the allegations, according to 3 officials briefed on the investigation in a statement from a House congressional committee. Richard Hopkins claims that a postmaster in Erie, PA, instructed postal workers to backdate ballots mailed after Election Day was cited by Senator Lindsey Graham in a letter to the Justice Department calling for a federal investigation. Attorney General William P. Barr subsequently authorized federal prosecutors to open probes into credible allegations of voting irregularities and fraud, a reversal of long-standing Justice Department policy. But on Monday, Hopkins, 32, told investigators from the U.S. Postal Service Office of Inspector General that the allegations were not true, and he signed an affidavit recanting his claims, according to officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe an ongoing investigation. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee tweeted late Tuesday that, quote, whistleblower completely recanted. Hopkins did not respond to messages seeking comment. And here's where it gets interesting. According to Hopkins, he did. He tried very much so to get a comment saying this is not true. And now we have this tweet from James O'Keefe. In fact, we have 2. James O'Keefe says, recording, federal agents coerce USPS whistleblower Hopkins to water down story. Hopkins doubles down. Agent Strasser, I am trying to twist you a little bit. Quote, I am scaring you here. We have senators involved, DOJ involved. Reason they called me is to try to harness. So I can play some of the audio here, and I think it should work. The Veritas video starts by them, explaining who the whistleblower is, what he was saying, and let me just play. It's 2 minutes.
They were grilling the hell out of me.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm kind of pissed. I feel like I just got played.
And I heard him say to the supervisor that they messed up yesterday. I was like, oh, what did they mess up on? And he told the supervisor that they had postmarked one of the ballots for the 4th instead of the 3rd, because they were supposed to put them for the 3rd.
So now it's giving us an explanation. I'll jump forward and check this out.
And so let me make good on that promise right away. Okay, this storm is getting crazy, right? And it's out of a lot of people's control. And so the reason they called me in is to try to harness that storm, try to reel it back in before it gets really crazy. Okay,
I understand.
Because we have senators involved, we have the Department of Justice involved, we have
Trump's lawyers team's gotten a hold of me.
I'm not. Well, I am actually. I am trying to twist you a little bit because in that, believe it or not, your mind will kick in.
Okay.
We like to control our mind, and when we do that, we can convince ourselves of a memory. But when you're under a little bit of stress, which is what I'm doing to you purposely, your mind can be a little bit clearer. And we're going to do a different exercise too to make your mind a little bit clearer. Okay?
Good to go.
So, but this is all on purpose.
Roger.
I'm not scaring you, but I am scaring you here.
It seems like they were trying to make me distrust y'all. And at the same time, it kind of affected, but at the same time, I was like, no, these guys have had my back since the get-go. So that's why I continued.
Do you think these federal agents have your back?
At this point, no. Hell
Do you
no.
think these federal agents are really interested in investigating fraud?
Honestly, I don't think they are.
And in fact, you heard Weisenberg tell a supervisor they were backdating the ballots to make it appear they'd been collected on November 3rd. You still stand by that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's it. Apologies for those who can't see it. Our monitor broke. Apparently I can't show it.
Sorry,
But
guys.
that's just a bit of the audio they put out so far. I imagine that James, he usually does longer form versions of this on his website. I guess you can choose to trust James O'Keefe. He's got a whistleblower. He's got a signed sworn affidavit. We got video of the guy delivering the mail. I don't know what else we need to go on to say. Here's a guy saying they were backdating ballots. But it's very, very weird. It's very, very brazen to see the Washington Post be like, the story's fake, he recanted. Then this guy to come back out immediately and be like, I never recanted. So we got this tweet from House Oversight Democrats saying, breaking news, Erie, PA, USPS whistleblower completely recanted his allegations of a supervisor tampering with mail-in ballots after being questioned by investigators, according to IG. Here are the facts. Richard Hopkins is a USPS employee in Erie, Pennsylvania, so that's not in dispute. He signed a sworn affidavit with allegations of ballot tampering and fraud and went public through Project Veritas. USPS IG began investigating last week. IG investigators informed committee staff today that they interviewed Hopkins on Friday, but that Hopkins recanted his allegations yesterday and did not explain why he signed a false affidavit. So now, not only do we have this video from James O'Keefe where they play the audio, but James actually put out a tweet of, I guess I don't know where it is. It's the guy, or at least I thought he had the tweet. Maybe it's on Project Veritas. He's actually sitting with the guy, I guess, in a hotel room, and the guy is looking at the Washington Post story and says, "This is not true. I did not recant this." So I don't know.
Yeah, one thing that sticks out to me when I look at this Washington Post summary is that, of course, they're relaying this claim that Hopkins recanted his allegations by way of this laundered anonymity, which always should raise a red flag. I don't care what it pertains to. I mean, this was done constantly over the course of Russiagate, where anonymous U.S. officials were quoted as characterizing certain things. Often you didn't even get a direct quote from them. And so the Washington Post or any other media outlet should not be surprised when people look at a story like this, look at this summation that's totally nonspecific, and view it askance, right? So it's possible that Hopkins, as claimed in this story, did in fact sign an affidavit recanting his claims. We don't know that. The James O'Keefe stuff you just played doesn't necessarily dispute that. It could provide countervailing evidence to maybe say that it was done under duress or something. But the problem in terms of any outstanding apprehension about the veracity of the story stems from the wanton use of anonymity that is so ubiquitous across the media that it just inevitably is going to engender suspicion, and rightly so.
This is a common thing they do with anonymous sources.
How is this okay?
We talked to some anonymous person. You don't know who it is. Trust us. The story is not true. He didn't give us a comment. Well, according to them, he's to Veritas, this guy's straight up saying it didn't happen. My question is, and
anonymity can sometimes be justified. Like, it's a valid device in journalistic practice, but you have to be transparent about why you're doing it. I mean, there's no clear reason, at least that's stated here, as to why this individual, apparently associated with the U.S. Postal Service Office of Inspector General, ought to have been granted anonymity in the first place. Like, if you have the affidavit, why not provide it? I mean, you're saying it's an ongoing investigation. What does that mean exactly? It's so vague that the Washington Post is asking the reader to just instinctively trust their veracity, and so often they've proved that they don't deserve that trust.
So what are we supposed to believe right now?
I mean, I don't know that. Let's say that the story that's put forward by Hopkins, as relayed by James O'Keefe, is entirely accurate. I mean, I think I heard there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Hopkins was referring to one ballot that was changed in Erie County. Well, now, they specifically said that one ballot was received on the 4th and then was backdated to the 3rd, right? Or did I hear that wrong?
You did. You heard it right. But the full context is that he overheard them saying they were backdating ballots, and he was instructed to bring any ballots from after the election to them because they were backdating them.
Okay, so
I want to keep going.
Let's just assume that all that is true. Whether that suggests some kind of systematic fraud, I think, is far from established, particularly in Pennsylvania, where it probably wouldn't have made a difference in the outcome anyway. I mean, when all the votes are counted, the margin could be as much as 100,000 votes for Biden. So I think, it would be expected. And in fact, I would be surprised if there weren't incidences of isolated fraudulent activity. But I think feeding a narrative where all this is supposed to indicate that the entire election should be negated or something, we're going to need a whole lot more evidence than has been provided so far.
So I just wanted to make sure I double checked. From Veritas, they say the insider said, quote, "We have to separate up the ballots and give them directly to the supervisors. They're post-marking and they're at the office and taking them directly to the ballot box." And it specifically says, all these ballots that were coming in today, tomorrow, yesterday are all supposed to be postmarked the 3rd. So that's the official claim. It's interesting. I was watching The Five earlier, on Fox, and Greg Gutfeld was saying I think it was Greg, and I think it was also Jesse, kind of both saying, Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld, that we're not right now at the point where we bring out big old stacks of evidence that something happened. We're at the point where we're like, we have some sworn affidavits that should warrant an inquiry or an investigation, and then you go and find evidence, assuming these accusations are correct. We've got, I think, I don't know how many, 3 or 4 perhaps, maybe it's 3, poll watchers who have signed sworn affidavits saying that they've seen some kind of fraud. I'm not saying widespread. I'm saying we have 3 affidavits. Is it enough to change an election? I honestly...
Well, if you think about it, 3 affidavits in a country of 330 million that has converted en masse to mail-in voting is really not that many.
Yeah, I guess, so the point being brought up on the 5 was, we're talking about a few key swing districts, and we're talking about a very, very narrow race where if you witness someone doing something improper, then that needs to be investigated, and then we could potentially find more evidence of a larger scale impropriety or overt fraud, I guess.
I guess the question I would have is, like, what does larger scale impropriety mean? If there's something systematic and fraudulent, then that would have to be coordinated in some way, or would have to, I think, be more of a cohesive initiative to change the outcome of the election than has been anything close to established. I mean, you can go back years and decades and find isolated incidences of fraud. I mean, there was, in 1960, JFK, it's thought, could have won the election over Richard Nixon because of straight up election fraud that happened in the Deep South. So I think nobody who is aware of history should discount that out of hand.
What's the vote margin in PA right now? Like, legit question.
The vote margin in Pennsylvania is Biden is ahead by 0.8%. And that's probably going to continue to go up. So
it's like 45,000 votes or something, isn't it?
Right now it's
like
70,000 or so.
Yeah.
70,000?
Yeah,
73,000. And it's probably going to inch up continuously to
40
in the 100,000 range.
Well,
so I mean, like, that's not a margin. I mean, that's not Florida 2000. That's not anything close to a point where it's even beyond the threshold where there would be an automatic recount in Pennsylvania.
Right. So AP has it around, I think I'm looking at 47,700 or so. That would require numerous post offices being in on.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I misread that figure.
But to get that margin, because we're also talking about hundreds of thousands of votes that came in, to get a margin where it's going to be able to actually overturn Pennsylvania, that's what numerous post offices, a dozen plus, that are all telling their supervisors to bring in late ballots and then backdate them so that we can count them. Like, it seems like it's not going to have an impact. You see what I'm saying?
I think it's going to have, if any impact, it's going to be extremely marginal. And to really get traction in the courts here, you would have to do something which has not yet been done, which is at least give some indication. And granted, you would need further investigation to uncover this. I grant that. But you would need to give some indication that there's a widespread, coordinated effort at undermining the legitimacy of the election with fraud. That's what I think would need to be established, especially if you have it across multiple states. I mean, we're not just talking about Pennsylvania. We're talking about Georgia, Arizona. I don't know if you want to throw Wisconsin in there and Michigan.
Well, Trump would have to.
But it's not just one state here where you can devote all your resources to uncovering every individual.
But I disagree. I don't think it needs to be a widespread coordinated thing. I think it could be what's referred to as a standalone complex. You've got these individuals who are zealous, very ideologically motivated, and all it takes is individuals acting in such a way that it looks like there's some type of concerted effort. It could just be one guy being like, man, I hate Trump, screw this, and then crumpling up a ballot. But you get 100 people doing that every so often because they hate Trump. Then you've got widespread impropriety that's not coordinated.
Yeah, I don't think it would necessarily. I should rephrase that. I don't think it has to be widespread and coordinated in order to have some kind of potency in terms of affecting the outcome. And you're right, there probably are people with a lot of zeal who don't like Trump and maybe fudge some things. I mean, that's plausible. But for it to be replicated across so many states, I think it's going to be it's a huge stretch to think that anything is going to be overturned.
The way I put it is,
and in Georgia, for example, where I just was. I mean, I spent the election in Georgia with a week leading up to it or so, and when Trump, I think it was the day after the election when he gave some remarks. first of all, he misstated that the Secretary of State of Georgia was a Democrat. He's not. So one reason why I find a lot of these claims implausible that I'm being inundated with on Twitter, which I'm sure you probably are as well, is that, it would have to encompass a huge amount of Republicans as well. But that's what people, I think, tend to miss about election administration. It really is baked into the cake that it has to be bipartisan in a lot of ways. Now, maybe it's not always abided by with 100% perfection. But in Georgia, for example, you have the Secretary of State, the governor, the lieutenant governor. Both chambers of the state legislature are held by Republicans. I was there in Atlanta in the State Farm Arena where the Atlantic Hawks used to play, where they were tabulating votes, and there were Republican observers everywhere. The Republican observers in the Fulton County warehouse where there was other tabulation taking place. So, and it was open to the public. So this, I think it really at least should be emphasized to people who don't have familiarity with this process that it's not like secretive and closed off for the most part. Could you find isolated incidents in a country of 330 million? I'm sure you can. But I just freely went in. I didn't flash any media credential. Anybody could go in and observe. I watched Republican and Democratic observers jointly looking at ballots that weren't properly processed so they could adjudicate whether they were valid. Yeah. And I'm far from an American exceptionalist in most cases, but there is something I think at least laudable about the transparency that elections tend to be conducted within. Sorry about that. I thought I put my phone on airplane mode.
You're good to go.
But I don't think we're going to be exporting our election models around the world by force because really, it's over a week now, and we still don't have calls in Arizona and Georgia. Yeah. It's ridiculous. North Carolina, I saw, was just called at least by decision desk HQ.
I think,
but the point is that, I sort of lost my train of thought. But you saw where I was going there.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.